Good afternoon, everyone. For paucity of time, we have to start, so let's go straight into the program. Once again, a warm good afternoon to all of you after a sumptuous lunch. And here we are speaking on healthcare, health management in modern times. The impact of communication in modern healthcare. It's a topic that is too relevant in this era while technology gets updated, I think by the minute, and keeps us on our fingertips almost every moment of our lives. A few years back, when I was sitting with a group of other people in a discussion like this, one of the panelists told me that I would be, because I'm in the diagnostic space, and one of the panelists told me that I would be out of business in a few years. I mean, he had reasons to tell me that because perhaps gone will be the days in future when someone would, you would just walk into a tunnel or, you walk into a room and then they would say that, you're okay or you're not okay. Things are evolving that way into the space of diagnosis or diagnostic space. We have lots and lots of newer and newer gadgets coming into the industry. The communication between the patient and the device, one's own body and the device and the doctor, the device and the hospital, and so many things like that. As was mentioned by Mr. V.K. Matthews in his earlier speech, a doctor sitting in US can probably do a surgery here in Cochin by robotics and with highly specialized cameras and things like that. So that is the way the medical technology is evolving these days. And sometimes these wearable devices that we wear on our hands prove very useful for us. Sometimes they play havoc also with our lives because we get the abnormal readings on our hands and then we immediately click the panic button in ourselves. So these are things that are to be debated upon, that are to evolve a little bit more before we come fully into the diagnostic space or into the patient care systems seamlessly. To throw light on these aspects, we are indeed happy and privileged to have with us today an eminent panel of people who are experts in their respective domains of manufacturing, treatment, and delivery. Thanks to all of you for having accepted our invitation to enlighten us on this topic. This topic has varied impacts on our everyday lives, and so I'm sure that we are going to have an enlightening hour with these eminent panelists. My duty here is to introduce the moderator for the day, Dr. Avinash Nani Wadekar, MD. He is a radiologist by qualification with a work experience of 25 years of clinical experience, MNC stint in APAC, Singapore, and then Singapore-based Philips Healthcare for healthcare transformation services. He has experience in advanced healthcare management program from ISB Hyderabad. He's done his program there from healthcare management program from ISB Hyderabad. He's an assessor of quality for the Quality Council of India. He was previously digital health officer at Tertiary Care Hospital in Western India, Ruby Hall Clinic, Pune. He's a mentor for KSUM. He's an incubator for the AI in healthcare. And presently, he is the clinical director for diagnosis, radiology, laboratory, molecular imaging, satellite business units, and new projects with the KIMS Health Group based out of Trivandrum, As we know, KIMS is one of the largest players in the healthcare industry across this part of Asia. We also have with us our panelist, Mr. Binu Matthew, Plant Head of Agape Diagnostics, Ms. Maria Lal, Leader Breakthrough Initiatives, Honeywell, and Mr. Arvind Raman, Healthcare Expert from Microsoft. On behalf of Kerala Management Association, I take the privilege of welcoming all of you and assure the delegates that we are going to have a great takeaways from this session. Over to you, Dr. Avinash, for taking over.
Thank you, Binu. Good afternoon to all of you. I hope we can infuse some 5G energy in everybody after a good lunch and make the session a little more alive. I would like to ask my fellow panelists to introduce themselves and say a few words about their passion, why they are here, and what they do actually do. Maria, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Lal. I work as a Breakthrough Initiatives sales leader at Honeywell, which is all about growing segments, capturing opportunities through technology in emerging segments. And while most of you associate Honeywell with aerospace or a lot of industrial automation, we have also recently, about 1 year back, launched healthcare solutions. I'll be talking more about that today. We're also looking at other emerging segments like electric vehicles and renewables. And that's about my professional area. And just to let you know, since Dr. Avinash spoke about personal interests also, I am an avid trekker and also a certified Zumba instructor. So that's about it from my side.
Thank you. Arvind.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, would like to thank KMA for this grand function and also for the opportunity for having me here. My name is Arvind Raman, and I play the role of a solution specialist for healthcare in Microsoft. Over the last day, I've had a few people inquiring in terms of Microsoft and healthcare. What's the correlation and what are you doing here? So I thought I'll just take this opportunity to quickly provide a snapshot of what Microsoft does from a healthcare perspective so that we all have the context. To get started, Microsoft's mission is to empower every organization and every individual to do more. From a healthcare perspective, it means delivering better, predictable outcomes, improving care coordination between the different stakeholders in an organization, enabling the frontline workers, enhancing the patient as well as the clinician experience. So we provide a portfolio of tools across business applications, across AI, across machine learning, infrastructure, modern workplace tools, when unified and integrated, provide a significant productivity improvement. Over the course of the session, I would be walking you through some of these examples and how leading healthcare organizations have gained benefits by leveraging these solutions. Thank you.
Binu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank KMA for giving me this opportunity to represent my company, Agape Diagnostics Limited. Basically, I'm an electronics engineer, did my MBA from IMK Kozhikode. After engineering, I worked for Robert Bosch in the automotive domain for a long 18 years. And later, I switched to the medical domain, now with Agape Diagnostics. To introduce what our company represents, most of you would have given blood for testing, right? So you would have gone to a laboratory or a hospital lab and given your blood, and you don't know what happens afterwards. So our brains, our equipments and reagents are working behind the screen in order to give you the results. So basically, Agape is into in vitro diagnostics and predominantly focusing on blood diagnostics. At Agape, we design and develop equipments and reagents which are working in the IVD domain. So I'm happy to represent my company here and speak about how connectivity will influence the healthcare domain. I've seen how automotive has transformed or utilized connectivity and transformed automotive domain as such. The last 8 years, when I was working with Robert Bosch, I worked on connectivity technologies And at that time, connected car was just a dream. And today, every segment of the vehicle, be it a small segment, mid segment, or a higher segment, have utilized connectivity to its fullest, and people are getting benefit out of it. Manufacturers are getting benefit out of it, and the complete automotive industry is getting benefit out of it. I'm sure that the healthcare sector also will emerge in connected technology and utilize the potential to the fullest.
Thank you, everybody. Firstly, a warm welcome to all of you as I kickstart the panel. As you can see that we have selected the panelists from different spheres of industry, technology, digital health, as well as automation, and I'm representing the healthcare here. We will discuss a couple of perspectives from the industry side, from the hospital and healthcare side, the caregiver side, as well as the patient. We all have to understand that as 5G is the new generation of mobile connectivity, we are going to be very closely connected, very densely connected. We are expecting more than 100 times the speed of internet and data transfer. We are expecting about decrease in 10% of latency. So there's going to be a lot of data overload, and we need to understand how are we going to manage that. It's going to have an impact on the human resources, time, and we need to understand what is the actual impact here. If you look at the financials, the growth of 5G market in healthcare in 2021 was about $215 million US. And in 2026, it is going to be $3,600. So you're talking about a 76% growth purely in 5G healthcare. I'm not talking about doing surgeries or patient falling sick. I'm talking about the opportunity for this sector of edge computing, Internet of Things, and IoT coming into this space. So that's the reason this panel, along with the previous panels on manufacturing, we're talking about banking, finance industry, every aspect of our economy is going to be impacted and is going to have a positive impact on healthcare outcomes. If you look at what exactly is the opportunity that we can discuss, I would like to ask first question to Arvind, coming from Microsoft, which we all know is a technology company, as to what is the exact starting point for which 5G can be an enabler? What would be the best way to use digital health and 5G and take it a step above?
Sure. Thanks, Avinash. So let me just start with a brief, I would say, analogy. If someone has to write the history of the world 100 years from now, it would be in 2 chapters, AC and BC. Any guidance what does AC and BC stand for? Okay. After COVID and before COVID. So COVID has significantly transformed industries, and particularly from a healthcare perspective has disrupted it to a very great extent. To talk about it, I could share how telemedicine has been one of those areas that has significantly changed the landscape. Now, it's not that telemedicine is something new. It's been there for a long time. Almost 15 years back, when I was initially into the segment, we've all done patient consulting using the ISRO satellites, which was linked directly to your laptops. But things have changed today, and today you have mobile phones wherein you can consult your doctor. But one of the other interesting things that has happened is that there is a primary displacement of care from the physician to the home. Microsoft did a research earlier with multiple healthcare providers, and we found that 95% of illness do not need an operation. Since you do not need an operation, there is no need for a doctor to touch you. Since the doctor doesn't have to touch you, he needn't be close to you. So being remote, 95% of illness can be treated. And we are seeing a huge adoption of this in today's times. 2G, 3G, 4G, yes, we had challenges in terms of connectivity. For me to meet a doctor, upload a particular CT scan or any of those reports would take time. But with 5G today, I am assured of a network with very low latency, wherein I could be assured that my data goes across and the doctor on the other side gets access to it and is able to effectively do the consultation. Similarly, the other thing that we've seen in organizations from a, I would say, 5G perspective has been leveraging AI. Today, if you look at the statistics, in terms of a patient to doctor ratio. For an allopathy doctor, the ratio is approximately a couple of thousands for every one doctor. And these thousands of people speak different languages. So how is it possible that I have thousands of people and I have one doctor on the other side who is able to speak possibly 2 or 3 languages and effectively communicate? That's where we have projects like the National Language Translation Mission, or what we call as the Bhashini project by the Government of India, which helps us to effectively translate hundreds of Indian languages into a particular language and do the cross conversion. That is, if I am a patient sitting in a rural village in Northeast and would like to speak to a doctor in, say, Bombay, then I can speak in any dialect of my choice. The tool, the speech services, has the ability to understand, interpret, and convert the language into a preferred language of choice by the doctor, thereby kind of ensuring a smooth communication. So access is the key focus area, and as I mentioned, telemedicine and the specific speech services or the translation services are something which will see a huge adoption in the next few months.
Thanks. So that means we're talking about accessibility. If you look at, people want access to a hospital or to a doctor. But as a doctor, I want access to data. I want access to reports. And as an industry, you want to have an access so you have more foresight in better care. So I think it's a universal opportunity for every industry, not just the patient. Cross-border, cross-linguistic barriers, cross-healthcare services, your access will become easier, faster. Now, coming to Binu, you come from a diagnostic service background, talking about laboratories being connected. Is it possible that every equipment in the hospital is going to be connected and talking to each other without any regulatory barriers or manufacturing barriers, which right now is the current trend? Will this change with 5G?
Thank you, Avinash. Before coming to that topic, let me just add to what Aravind mentioned about the transformation. So if he asked me who is the biggest CTO, not the chief technical officer, the chief transformation officer, it's probably the COVID, right? So we have seen that transformation. And that was all because of connectivity. That was the key backbone behind that transformation. Just to put in perspective, just to understand how connectivity will influence our lives, I will just take an analogy again from the automotive world. It's called telematics or toll gate. We are all familiar with toll gates, right? There was an era when we were standing in the queue or parking in the queue for crossing the toll gate. That's the 2G era. Now we have FASTags. That is the 4G era. There is something beyond this. Probably none of us would have seen this, but I've experienced this from my days in Bosch. That is called telematics. You will be able to zoom through a toll gate at a speed of 60, 80 kilometers and still pay your toll bills. This is possible through connectivity. So we have seen in automotive, we have seen in industry, we have seen in healthcare as well as the era of 2G, the era of queuing up at various occasions in healthcare. Today we are at the 4G era where we have to stop, but we can cross with our FASTag. Tomorrow we are going to the 5G era where we can zoom through the toll gate at a speed of 60, 70 kilometers. Coming to the question, at Agape we have taken the strategy that every equipment, diagnostic equipment we develop is going to be connected. It's already connected and it's going to be more connected. Today our equipments are connected through wire technologies, and tomorrow our equipments are going to be wirelessly connected. What this gives for the patient, it is more access to data, more access to reliable data. For the lab technicians, it is access to data at the right point of time and the right manner. Today, the laboratory is depending on papers, printouts, and data collection in several other manual mechanisms. Enabling connectivity in devices, especially in medical devices and laboratory devices, will enable access to data in a faster and much accurate and efficient manner, making it seamless. There will not be any paper sitting in between a lab technician and the device anymore. The data gets directly uploaded into the laboratory systems or into the hospital systems. So this makes the seamless connectivity between the device and the infrastructure. Then coming to the doctors, doctors will get easy access to the same data, correlate the data in a different ways, correlate the data coming from different equipments at a common connectivity platform. Then for the manufacturers, it's very important to have connectivity. One, because we are able to upgrade the systems. So today, most of our systems are software driven. And over-the-air update or update at the field is a big scenario for manufacturers. This is giving a big advantage in today's mobile phone. You would have already seen this, experienced this. Today's mobile phone software is not tomorrow's software. It's going to be ever-changing, ever-improving. In the same way, medical devices are also going to get upgraded as and when needed, as and when incidents happen, as and when improvements are required, as and when maintenance are required. So connectivity platform enables the manufacturers to keep alive the equipments in the right manner, making sure that it's working properly, making sure that tomorrow it's not going to break down. That's the key point, right? A breakdown of an equipment in a laboratory or a hospital, it's going to be very costly. So maintaining the equipment from manufacturer point of view, from infrastructure point of view in a hospital or a laboratory is another key point. For the patients, again, one another factor for the patients and the practitioners, what this data will benefit, the data which is coming out of different equipments is benefiting is in terms of the 4 Ps of public health, right? And one of them being preventive and proactive. Another thing is personalized, context-specific and personalized. So enormous amount of advantages are going to come from the data which is coming out of all these equipments. I'm sure that all this collaborative data which is coming out of this is going to be great meaningful for the hospital, medical, laboratory, and all these industry segments.
Thank you. I think that brings me to a point. What we're talking is something which is going to be there. I want to ask you, Maria, on the ground experience, Honeywell, have you worked with a healthcare partner? Have you got this on the ground? Is it flying in India, or we are just talking about copying the West, waiting for FDA to clear these products? Whether we are really doing monitoring of patients or we are just talking about this on a forum. Can you just throw some light on that?
Sure, thanks, Dr. Avinash. So even before I address what Honeywell is experiencing, let me talk about India. In India, I think a lot of you relate to manufacturing, right? We had some of our distinguished panelists also speak about manufacturing. 16% of the world's GDP is manufacturing, and we have the same percentage in India. We all know about Industry 4.0 and what kind of potential it has when it comes to digitalization and industrialization, and what kind of a potential revenue stream it could be for communication service providers. Now, if I draw the same analogy for healthcare expenditure in India, it's a meager 1.2%. This is compared to the world average of about 6%. So is this enough? Clearly not. But are we heading in the right direction? Taking a cue from Arvind here, he spoke about the BC and the AC era, right? So COVID kind of pushed us into adopting more and more digital technologies, and the percentage grew to about 2.1% of GDP. So while we were heading in that direction, but there was a thrust that we got and we moved up. Now the National Health Policy of 2017 talks about having this percentage at least 2.5% of Indian GDP. Are we heading there? Yes, we are. With the upcoming budget coming up and also with the rise in COVID cases, we can only hope that the government this year as well allocates a higher percentage. Also talking about infrastructure. So what do communication technologies like 5G need on ground? India today is at 33% fiberization. So we will need close to about 70% more fiberization if we have to move on to technologies like 5G. It requires an investment of close to rupees 5 lakh crores. This is as per the India Infrastructure Research. So are we doing enough? Yes, there are some government initiatives. You all would have heard about the National Digital Health Mission. There are a lot of digital adoption technologies that hospitals are now adopting. Slowly, steadily, we are getting there. We are heading in the right direction, but it still needs a lot of work on ground to be done before we can get to where we need. And I remember Dr. Joy yesterday spoke about something, right? He spoke about the difference between a scalar and a vector, right? As long as we know what direction we are heading in, we will reach that destination. So The only thing that I would like to conclude with Dr. Avinash is by saying that, we are heading in the right direction, but more increase, let's say more, allocation to digital health allocation, plus infrastructure in terms of digital technologies will help accelerate this trend.
Thanks. So what I see is out here a game changer from the point that industry is driving change in healthcare behavior for us to practice. Consumer-driven demand from the patients who want accessibility, ease of, I would say, care, quality of care. So there is definitely going to be an increased demand for just affordable care or maybe quality care. And the other part is, like a speaker in the previous panel also talked about, how are we going to train the future generation of nurses, the future generation of technologists, the future generation of doctors. We don't have cadavers for dissection. We don't have enough surgical opportunities in private hospitals for young surgeons or physicians to train on. That's where augmented reality, virtual reality will come in. But it also has to come in with a trust, because there'll be a lot of trust deficit. If I'm trained as a heart surgery on a robot, and I have no experience of seeing blood on my hands. So there will be some caveats on these opportunities, because I'm trying to take this to the classroom, to the training school. We all talk about access. So we are going to maybe increase the access from maybe 50 crores population of India to 70 crores. But we already are strained in resources of doctors and nurses. By making this connectivity, are we bending the back of the existing infrastructure, the hospitals, the doctors? So how that challenge is going to be addressed? Many people talk that AR, VR is the solution. You can sit here, get a knee replacement done by some surgeon in UK. It's all good, it's all fancy, but it has to be taken with a pinch of salt. We are still not there. Right now, I'm not talking about the negativism or the skepticism of Indian healthcare constraints. I'm saying the easiest or the low-hanging fruit is, let's connect all the dots. And how did India today come to this 5G level where healthcare became a main player? Arvind, I want you to talk about the 5G India healthcare stack. How does it evolve? You can just give us a brief on that.
Surely. Before I get into the 5G part of it, from a tech stack perspective, I think it is very critical for us to understand the India stack that is currently available. And what we are seeing is a focused direction by the government to build upon this stack. So what I would do is just quickly provide a snapshot of some of the initiatives from the government of India in terms of building together a tech stack that is which is going to impact all of us. And I'm sure you all would have heard about the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, which is a flagship program from Government of India. The aim of this project is to build a network or a backbone to offer integrated digital health services. What is Ayushman Bharat from a technology perspective? It primarily means building upon the existing digital public goods built by Government of India. Let's take a step back. Over the last 15 years, we have built a portfolio of tools, starting from Aadhaar, which is used for authentication. We have your eKYC, you have your digital locker, and you have your payment gateways. Each of these tools are horizontal goods, and now is the time to leverage these horizontal goods by building in a specific industry stack. So what Government of India is doing as a part of Ayushman Bharat is building in an interoperable structure, which is scalable, which is frugal, which is built on open standards, which primarily will help us to exchange healthcare data in a seamless way. Just like I use UPI to transfer money across a mobile number, across a wallet, across an individual, the Ayushman Bharat digital stack will help us to do that. So I'll just spend 2 minutes to kind of walk you through it so you get an understanding of it. The primary foundation of this is an Ayushman Bharat digital health account, wherein I can store all my necessary documents, be it a blood report, be it any kind of details. Just like I have my e-DigiLocker, I go ahead, I download the app, I create a storage account, and I can easily store my details. The second is a consent-based architecture. Personal data is extremely sensitive, and I don't want anyone else to kind of get access to it. So access to this personal data is built on a complete consent-based architecture. The third is a federated architecture. Today you have a primary clinic, a secondary clinic, thousands of clinics all over the place, and it is going to be challenging to aggregate all the data into a common place. So what the government said is, you store the data in your particular location and make it accessible through open standards like FHIR. And of course, the last one is the critical one, wherein the government is building in a set of digital registries. Registries in terms of drug developers who have to make their pricing absolutely transparent. A registry of hospital providers, wherein every hospital has to make available what is the number of beds, ICU beds that are available for everyone. The third is in terms of hospital professionals, wherein I know that this is a certified doctor who has been certified by Government of India rather than someone who is trying to claim to be one. And last is the services. Services in terms of ambulances, in terms of blood banks, in terms of diagnostic centers. So this is the stack that is getting built today as a part of the India stack. On top of this is where the opportunity is for private players to build in very specific applications which can exchange and share information across all of these. To just talk about UPI today, one of the biggest beneficiaries has been the PhonePe, the Google Pay and Paytm, but then the underlying infrastructure belongs to the government. In the same way, if you look at CoWIN today, there are almost more than 100 applications that are built on the CoWIN stack, which is helping to exchange information. So the India stack is something that will ensure transparent exchange of data amongst all users and will significantly revolutionize the healthcare segment in India.
Thanks. So if you look at a healthcare perspective, I mean, coming from a hospital background, when I look at my balance sheet, because ultimately that's going to make me drive for better work profiles. We spend 30% on infrastructure, equipment cost in the hospital. We spend about 22 to 23% on the manpower and the workforce cost. How does 5G impact the industry from logistics? Will blockchain, fintech, and 5G make my hospital manage inventory, mine my information, get me much better, faster? Does 5G help in the back-end operations of the hospital?
Sure, very valid question. Experts are very rare, right? So are assets. So asset management is a very key topic in the medical industry as well. So like Arvind mentioned, if you're able to monitor the asset utilization, then only we can effectively use them and utilize them. So is the case of experts or practitioners. So the key point here is, unless we know how much is being utilized, whether it is a practitioner or an asset or a medical device in a hospital or in a laboratory, this requires data. And these devices needs to be connected to get this data. We need to make meaningful analysis of this data to make an understanding that how much of these assets are being utilized, and if they are not utilized, deploy them in the right place, in the right manner. For example, in an ICU, there are very complicated medical devices. And who is attending these devices? The nurses. They're just looking for certain notifications which are coming on the devices. 80% of the features are not used by these nurses. What if these devices are connected and the relevant data is sent across to the experts? Then there is more meaning to these devices and there is better utilization of these devices. Another point of view is supply chain. Pharma and IVD is dealing with short expiry or specialized chemicals, reagents, medicines, and so on. So supply chain of these items or materials to be deployed, to be used at the right place, at the right point of time is very important. If all these laboratory devices were connected and we had a collaborative data analysis, we are precisely able to predict which location of the country, which state or district of the country is emerging a pandemic, is having a disease emerging. So the distributors, the manufacturers are able to predict the demand of such medicines, such reagents, and then deploy them at the right point of time, at the right place. So the connectivity of devices giving the right data is very important in supply chain and meeting the demands at the right time.
Thank you. That talks about health economy, being benefited even by the 5G infrastructure. Maria, I want to come back to you on the ground reality, since you have good experience during COVID and post-COVID, working with a premier cardiology institute. And I want to know exactly how did that, when you started that initiative, that was pre-5G, how do you see that, relate that experience and talk about the context of taking it further on the 5G?
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Avinash, for the question. It is my pleasure to talk to you about this. So let me take a few minutes to talk about the Honeywell real-time health monitoring system. This is nothing but a wireless solution which can wirelessly transmit ECG, respiratory rate, heart rate, temperature, and the blood pressure. Okay? The place where we have implemented this solution today is the Narayana Institute of Cardiac Sciences in Bangalore. It's a 700-bedded hospital. We have enabled this solution there. What happens is, through different FDA-approved wearable devices, the data gets transmitted to the Honeywell cloud, from where we pull out the data, perform a lot of AI, ML algorithms on it, but eventually the nurse can see it at the nursing station. One can see it on the caregiver's mobile phone. It can be seen on a tablet, on a laptop. It can even be integrated into the hospital information system, which is something that almost all hospitals use today. When I talk about how it was, we started this about a year back. Not a lot of hospitals were trying to go in this direction. There was a lot of interest. A lot of hospitals were trying to understand what the solution and technology was about. But 1 year working into this space, we see a lot of hospitals trying to adopt this kind of technology. So a lot of people in the hospitals, a lot of management in the hospitals is now looking at wearables, specifically medical grade wearables, to integrate into their operations today. And how this has transformed their operations is, a nurse who was going around the wards every 4 hours, monitoring these vitals of patients, can now automatically get these vitals on any of these platforms that I spoke about. So what is it doing? It's improving caregiver productivity. It's reducing caregiver fatigue, which is also another big thing. In India, 50% is the attrition rate of nurses. So you can very well imagine what kind of fatigue the nurses go through. Also, one phenomenal change, which I think a lot of you will be able to relate to, is we're seeing a rise in heart attacks, right, in India now. With this solution, we can eliminate cardiac arrests in a general ward in a hospital. How do we do that? So what we are calculating is something called an early warning score. Based on all these parameters, we calculate the score. If it is an amber or a red, it means the nurse can then divert their attention and care to those specific patients who need it the most. And if a patient is in red, this is an early sign that the patient needs to be shifted immediately to the ICU. So this is something we're doing on ground. We're seeing a lot of benefits come out of this. And I'll take the liberty of saying this. We are probably stepping into an era of hybrid care, if I can call it so, which is kind of a combination between the physical and the virtual care. And as we talk about in hospitals, we are also looking at taking this kind of a solution and technology to people within their homes or outside of hospitals. So maybe a little later, we can also talk about how we're trying to work into connected ambulances. That's one space I think a lot of hospitals are trying to look at. And also about home healthcare, because this kind of a solution is very easily extendable to home healthcare. There are its own challenges, but that's something that this kind of technology can easily be extended to.
Thank you. What was the infrastructure change you would need? In the present context, would you change the fiber optics cabling? Would you go for beacons? Will you go for changing the entire infrastructure in the IT? Or hospitals, do they have to make a big transition when they build a 5G ready opportunity? It could be a surgical ward, it could be a OR.
Sure. Let me take the example of what I spoke about. So while we are still not 5G enabled, right? But let's say 5G comes in tomorrow, what happens? So if I talk about connected ambulances, for example, I can very easily, with the speeds that the 5G network gives me, with the bandwidth, and with the ability to connect multiple devices, the density, right? Somebody spoke about it in the previous panel as well. I can connect multiple users to something like this. And what it means is if a patient has had an accident, let's say somebody had an accident, they've been taken into an ambulance, they can immediately be monitored. And this monitoring can continue until they come into the emergency ward of a hospital, and it can continue even post-discharge. So, in a sense, while the technology remains same, the benefit of communication technologies like 5G can be realized even better, if we look at the kind of speeds that this can offer or how it can translate into people, you and me sitting at our homes and taking more control of our health. And if I can also talk about the 4 Ps of healthcare here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 4 Ps of healthcare, and Dr. Avinash, forgive me if I miss anything. So the first P is predictive. Okay, are we able to predict an event from happening? So like I just mentioned, we are able to predict now a cardiac arrest, could happen 2-3 hours in advance. Are we able to, participate? That's something Binu also spoke about, right? Are we participating in this? So as 5G or communication technologies like this emerge, I, as a user of this technology, will also be able to participate better in my health. So there's already a study which says with the use of wearables, people feel more and more involved. They feel, they take more ownership of their health, right? A lot of people, 50% of patients today miss their medications. So this kind of includes the participatory element now. Are we able to do all of this together? Today, not yet. But with technologies like 5G coming in, yes, we will be able to do this. So that's what I want to talk about, Dr. Avinash. I mean, while we're not there yet, but going into that realm and the possibilities that this could open up are huge.
Fine. I think a couple of limitations which 5G would bring about also is you talk about Internet of Things today, and I talk about Internet of Medical Things, IOMT, where sensors are extremely expensive. There is a very high cost of building chips. Semiconductor industry, we all know, we suffered the last full year not getting what we wanted, the equipment's not coming into India from the world, Japan constraint. But when I talk about sensor innovation with 5G in mind, for all of you, do you think the cost of care will come down? Do you think 5G will make healthcare cheaper? Or it will still remain prohibitive in many areas? Because remote monitoring, diabetes monitoring, heart failure monitoring, or monitoring jaundice, or maybe blood pressure in a pregnant woman, sensors are extremely costly.
Sure, I'll kind of answer this in 2 ways. First, from an individual perspective. Now, if you look at it, all of us wear some kind of a wearable device which primarily captures some amount of vital parameters, at least in terms of your pulses, in terms of your oxygen levels. Would you know these information is sufficient enough to do certain risk predictions? Today, we have a host of startups in India who are building in predictive risk indicators for a heart attack, for diabetes, for liver cirrhosis. And what is the data they're collecting in from? Simple data like what you put on your wearable devices. Today, with 5G coming in and the strong adoption of, I would say, sensors, we are able to transmit data on a real-time basis from these devices to the mobile phone to a network wherein at some end there is some aggregator who's collecting the data and then running analytics on it to build these prediction models. Not only data and I would say aggregators, but even firms like insurance companies are now looking at buying in this specific data and building in specific products catered to your lifestyle. Today, when I go for an insurance policy, in today's times, I go to a hospital, I kind of do a couple of tests, and my premium is more or less fixed, of course, based on some specific ailments. But we are looking at a scenario wherein your premiums will be exclusively linked to your specific health data. And this data is something that will come from wearables, and of course, it will help them to manage their risks. So overall, it will help the industry to kind of benchmark their risks and also help the users to kind of gain, I would say, more insights and predictiveness about their health. So from a cost perspective, yes, it will definitely lower the overall cost of care.
But that's a Microsoft perspective. I would like to ask Binu, indigenous, made in India, how would you address this challenge?
Yeah, the key point is the healthcare sector is moving from a hospital clinician-centered approach to a patient-centered approach. The patient is going to be the center of the attraction, and thereby having these sensors are going to be inevitable. Putting these sensors will enable every stakeholder to capture the data and give it back to the patient for better accessibility, speed of access, and quality of access of the healthcare. So in Agape, we are manufacturing diagnostic devices, like I mentioned, and Agape is one of the first Indian IVD company to indigenously develop a cell counter. And we were also awarded several patents in this domain. So thereby, we're having a strong presence both in the R&D, manufacturing, and sales and service in the Indian market as well as abroad in terms of diagnostics. What we have learned here is data is the new gold. Capturing as much as data in the right way under the surveillance, under the regulations, is giving a lot of insights into, like I mentioned earlier, benefiting the patient, benefiting the manufacturer, benefiting the hospitals, and all the players in the industry. So yes, the sensors have to evolve, the devices have to evolve, but we have seen this already evolving in any other sectors. We have seen the gaming metaverse already. We have seen the industry metaverse already getting evolved. By the way, what metaverse is a combination of digital twin, artificial intelligence, data analysis, and more importantly, a stable backbone, the connectivity platform. So this is going to evolve. The metaverse of healthcare is going to be a reality, and soon we will all be part of it, be part of the digital twin era.
Thanks. Binu, I'll just correct you. You said data is the new gold. I would say data is the new oil, because we are all fighting for oil eventually. So, Maria, your take on that as a Honeywell speaker.
So, you know, in the initial days, and this is more from personal experience that I want to add, when I was taking this solution to the market, I was a little worried personally as well, because I know of stories in the US where healthcare is only accessed or accessible if you have medical insurance. And I do know how expensive it is there. And I was a bit worried when I was taking these kind of solutions, because Honeywell, as you all know, is an American company at the end of the day. And like Dr. Avinash said, a lot of these sensors happen to be expensive. But I was, you know, all my fears were laid to rest when I spoke with Dr. Devi Shetty at Narayana Hridayalaya. He told me one thing: Maria, today it is expensive, but India has one advantage which other countries don't. We can have economies of scale. As and when technology will get adopted, right, as adoption increases, India has this advantage, and it's probably the only country that he proudly, you know, says that it can and will drive costs down. And that's what we see in India as well. As and when technology gets adopted, the costs come down automatically. So, I mean, I just want to go back to the first point that I made about the fact that public infrastructure needs to have that push. There needs to be a push from the government. There needs to be a push from private players. We need to improve the adoption of digital technologies. As long as we push and go in that direction, this is automatically bound to happen.
We come to one other point which was spoken again in the morning, and I have kind of flirted with a couple of industry who deal with artificial intelligence, specifically to radiology, and we all talk about how AI is going to take away my job or Binu's job or anybody's job. I think that's still far away. 5G definitely has a big impact on what AI tools will be developed. AI coming into pathology, AI coming into radiology, AI coming into triaging in accident and emergency situations. But I still feel there's a long way to go. So, there is a lot of favorable opportunity for 5G in what we spoke on: remote monitoring, accessibility, connected diagnosis, ambulances being connected, blockchain coming in to manage inventory. I still feel there are a couple of things which will be going slow. Like I talked about augmented reality for surgery or extended reality for surgery, or talking about AI, speeding it up. Because the kind of information you need to make an AI engine, the kind of number of iterations you need to do, we have the volume in India. But unfortunately, we lack governance, we lack regulation, we lack policy. And this is where I think we need to look at how government policies and regulations will be helping us to make the 5G across like a flat hierarchy. This is possible, this is not possible, that should not be the story. I mean, do you all agree that in AI there will be an overwatch needed?
Yeah, I think standardization is a very key element here. Whether it is talking about the EHR or regulations, so standardization has to evolve in this sector as well. So AI has tremendous possibilities, and that is already proven in several other sectors. AI can be utilized, like you mentioned, for remote surgeries. Augmented reality can be used for remote surgeries. AI can give intelligence about disease intelligence, for example. So things have to evolve in the medical sector, and the right utilization of the technology at the right use case is very important. So I think the healthcare industry has to focus on the relevant use cases, patient-centric relevant use cases, and utilize AI to its fullest potential. Apart from patient-centric approach, some of the other areas where AI benefits is, again, coming to the device. So we have been seeing the era of edge computing. The memory, processing power, software capabilities all have emerged to a very large extent, and the devices, edge devices, be it a mobile phone or a medical device, it's having tremendous computing power now. But we have already seen that that's becoming saturated. It's not able to handle the huge amount of data which is to be analyzed by or utilized by the artificial intelligence engines. Here is where connectivity, high-speed connectivity like 5G is going to help. There is going to be a trend in conversion of edge computing to cloud computing. The devices are going to be connected in a fast and secure manner using 5G, and the higher supercomputing algorithms are going to be run in cloud. This will enable the potential of both the edge computing and the cloud computing, thereby giving better, faster quality results which will benefit the patients and the practitioners.
Thanks. Maria, Binu, any comments on this?
Sure. I'll answer this question more specifically. So, while Binu talked about the direction in which this should head towards, but I also want to call out insurance, the role that insurance has to play here. Today in India, most patients are cash patients. Insurance, I believe, has a big role to play, especially when it comes to adoption of technologies like this. And maybe, one of the areas that I see today, while we work on ground as Honeywell, is a lot of consumables. As long as they're within the hospital premises, they're covered in insurance. The moment you take that home, it's not covered. And communication technologies like 5G will enter into that realm, right? They will enter our homes. This will make technologies enter into areas which are outside of the hospital. So that's probably one, call to action that Dr. Avinash, I can maybe point out. Governing bodies like IRDA possibly would need to look into, to make sure that adoption increases. That is one. The other larger point that I want to make is about a very close coordinated effort that will be needed by clinical teams working very closely with technology partners or even with in-house technology teams. Until these two work together, we will not be able to evolve the kind of risk regulatory framework that would be needed. As you all know, there are a lot of data and privacy security threats, right, that this kind of technology poses. But can we look at it with a technology lens alone? No. Can we look at it with a clinical lens alone? No. Both need to work together hand in hand to think about what are those changes that we need. I think it's these are very exciting times for us to redefine, reimagine, what possibilities this new era of communication holds.
Arvind, a quick question before I wrap up is, the recent threat on data which happened in All India Institute, we had a ransomware attack. What would be your caution on 5G, security, confidentiality, and any kind of cyber threat? We all are worried about data sharing, so just last take before I wrap up this session.
Surely. So while none of us can ever be safe from security attacks, and we are sure that despite the best technologies, there is someone who's always going to kind of identify the next virus or bug to kind of infiltrate your systems. Having said that, our advice to customers is always that build in a zero trust policy when it comes to security. It primarily comprises of three aspects. First is, don't trust anyone. Validate each and every request, each and every, I would say, user who accesses your system. Just because it's coming behind your own corporate firewall, don't trust him. Second is privileged access, or I would say minimal access. Do not give access to any user beyond what he wants. Keep information access on a need-to-know basis, and that should significantly help. And the most important thing, there will be a breach. So assume that there is going to be a breach and prepare to minimize the radius of the blast to the minimal. So you will have to kind of build in firewalls between different applications, between different divisions, between different departments. So even if there is a particular attack, your damage is very much limited. So zero trust policy is what I would say we should adopt strongly.
Thank you, Arvind. In conclusion, I would say let's talk about the common man, the patient, who is going to be the center of attraction, as Binu said. What does 5G mean to the patient? I feel more data, better health. He will have access to his own data. He will have analytics, which the doctor will have, hospital will have, even he will have as a patient, because he owns the data. He will understand the importance of self-care, which also will be regulated by insurance sector. There will be shorter stays in the hospital. He will have better quality of care. For the doctors and the hospitals, since we will have access to data, we will have access to behaviors of patient. We will be able to see them faster, treat them faster, improve the quality of care, give better outcomes. Patients' waiting time will reduce. For the hospital insurance industry, the healthcare ecosystem, including from suppliers and inventory managers and everybody who is manufacturing, we will look at making better use of the finance and funding, make our resource, optimize them, and bring down the cost of care. From the government perspective, I think with the data of epidemiology, we will get much better insights about population health and population management, and eventually I think we can bring about a more healthier India. So on that note, I would like to conclude and thank my fellow panelists that 5G definitely is a boon. Healthcare definitely the fastest opportunity, and we should all embrace it, get ready for it, think seriously about it. And of all the 5-6 low-hanging fruits we discussed about, touched about, just maybe for about 2 or 3 minutes, but I hope we all find a small comfort zone where we can start using it in our future opportunity. I'm open to questions from the audience, and I would like to thank my panel and KMA for giving us this opportunity to present this 5G opportunity in healthcare. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was truly a mesmerizing and enriching session for all of us. Let's once again put our hands together for this wonderful panel, and especially our moderator, Dr. Avinash Nanuvadikar. May I now request two of our managing committee members to kindly join on stage, Ms. Lekha Balachandran, who is the managing partner of Recital, and another managing committee member of the KMA, Mr. Thomas John, who is the managing director of Agape Diagnostics, accompanied by the president and the convention chair. Meanwhile, may I request Dr. Avinash to kindly recognize the panelists, Mr. Binu Matthew, Ms. Maria Lal, and Mr. Arvind Raman. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Dr. Avinash Naniwadekar for that excellent panel discussion that we had. And yes, truly, the next generation communication is definitely going to revolutionize the way we live, especially in the healthcare sector. President and the convention chair to kindly stay back, as we will now have the lucky dip for the Wonderla amusement park. We also would like to request Mr. Tojo Matthew to be on stage, the Chief Manager of Wonderla Holidays. Well, the first lucky member to go to Wonderla is Professor Dr. B. Harindran. Are you here? Dr. B. Harindran? Well, would you kindly stand up? Can we give a round of applause for the lucky person who is going to make a trip to Wonderla soon?
Doctor, I have your card with me. I'll be in touch with you. So whatever cards are selected, I'll be coordinating with you directly.
Well, you're not going anywhere. The next lucky winner is G. Satish Pillai, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Agape. Are you here? Oh, yes, here it is. Can we give a round of applause for him as well? So please do get in touch with us. Well, the next in line is Shinumon Chako, who is the Assistant General Manager and Quality Assurance of Murugappa. Are you here, Shinumon? Yes, Shinumon, yes. Congratulations. And next we have Sharafat PS. Mr. Sharafat PS. Congratulations. He's the manager of Puat Logistics Private Limited. Well, some of you are praying, we can hear it. And this goes to Sebastian VF. Sebastian VF of Maria Pharma. Here goes. Congratulations to you. Okay, never mind, we've taken 5, we have another 5 to go. So hopefully you get it. Thank you.